Great. Thanks for joining us. So I was just saying, as people are starting to join, I'm Rivka from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in the UK. We're the largest Palestine Solidarity organization across Europe. We have thousands of individual members and 70 local branches all around Britain. And we campaign in support of the rights of the Palestinian people. We're really happy to be having this event tonight. Very serious circumstances, of course. So with me is Inés Abdel Razek, who's coming to us from occupied Palestine, and Inés is from Robit by PIPD. So thanks, Inés, for joining us. And I wondered, just as we're kind of everybody who's joining, if you could say a little bit about Robit by PIPD.
Yes, thank you, Rivka, and thank you for organizing this conversation. I think it's important. Thanks for inviting me. So I'm the advocacy director for Rabit, the digital platform of PIPD. So we are both organizations. We are a small campaigning organization based in Palestine, and we're trying to basically bring the Palestinian voice abroad through campaigning and advocacy for freedom, justice, and dignity for the Palestinians and for all peoples. Yeah, so let's dig in.
Great. Yeah, and obviously the perfect person and organization to join us for today. So just a little bit of context. I mean, here in Britain, I'm sitting here in London, and we've had like a few weeks of political chaos here. We have a new prime minister. It feels like we've got a new prime minister every few weeks here. So a lot happening in this country. But amidst all of this, obviously the situation in Palestine has been moving very quickly, and we want to keep our eyes on it to make sure that we're not losing track of what's happening on the ground. We, as a solidarity movement, we can't go quiet in support of the Palestinian people. So it's really important for us to hear from people in Palestine like yourself, Inés, what's happening, and then we can have a conversation in the organization and with all of our members and supporters about what we can do to respond. So we can talk about that a little bit at the end, but maybe we can just start with a question about sort of exactly what's happening. So there were quite a few events happening in Nablus last night. Can you just tell us what happened and give some of the wider context around that?
Yeah, so unfortunately we lost 6 Palestinians overnight, 5 from Nablus and 1 who was also killed by the Israeli occupation forces in Nabi Saleh. Israel's repression has been really intensifying over the past weeks. And I would say it has concentrated over Nablus, Jenin, but also Shafat, the refugee camp that is in Jerusalem. So I must say that I'm in Jerusalem, and so for many of us who are not in Nablus, for example, at the moment, like a lot of us, we're following on like WhatsApp, Telegram, on the news, on everyone we know, like basically what's happening. And so it feels terrible because like sometimes we feel also very far sitting just here in Jerusalem. So what has happened is basically Israel, as Israeli occupation forces have been raiding over and over the city of Jenin and then the city of Nablus. They're basically trying to terrorize the population, and I think the idea for them is to go after Palestinian militants, Palestinians, armed resistant fighters. Who mainly have been young people who have been calling themselves the Lion's Den group. It's sort of a new group that is cross-partisan, that is not affiliated to kind of the traditional factions. And a few of them have been carrying out in operations against the Israeli military forces or against the police forces. And so basically Israel has been retaliating extremely harshly through collective, just collective punishment, collective rage, collective just enclosement of the people. And I think the people have been really also supporting, I think, all of the Palestinians, militant groups or not, who have been under attack. Palestinian streets, the Palestinian young people have been really supporting and I think responding to that, going into the streets, doing noise, in order to basically just resist these, I think this permanent raids and attacks of the Israeli military. So we're talking really incursions of the army, of the of underground, like undercover agents in the middle of the old city of Nablus. And of course, we have to remember that the Palestinian Authority is not, supposedly has control over, these the big cities like Nablus, Ramallah, Jenin, but actually the PA forces are doing security coordination with the Israeli occupation forces. And when the Israeli occupation forces are coming in, mainly the PA forces are usually hiding out or disappearing. This happens every time. It has happened when the army has raided Ramallah and forcibly closed NGOs, to now what we're seeing happening in Nablus.
Yeah, that's a really important context. And of course, the way that some of that information is coming to us here in Britain, for example, misses a lot of the bigger picture. So I wanted to ask you about that. There was a BBC report this morning that I saw that talked about those military invasions of Nablus, but talking about them as a response to armed resistance. And it strikes me that that's missing a lot of the bigger context, not only around the past few weeks, but much longer time.
Yeah, of course. So the West Bank has been under occupation for more than 50 years, and what that means, especially for Nablus, we have to realize that now the city, and we've actually shared the map on our Instagram account. The way that the Israelis have basically entrenched apartheid and settler colonialism in the West Bank is also to have really isolated each city from each other. They have fragmented us, and basically they can enclose us in 1 hour. They can close entries and exits to refugee camp cities. These cities are, especially Nablus, Jenin, that whole area, Salfit, they're completely surrounded by violent settlers and by settlements. Settlements have extremely grown over the past decades in that area. And so Palestinians are literally surrounded by settlers, by checkpoints. And so, basically there's zero political horizon. The life that one has is just one of enclosures, impossibility to go to Jerusalem, needing permit to do anything, military checkpoints, but also just regular humiliation, because you have to realize that the Israeli military daily practice is to do raids in homes and terrorize children, to arrest teenagers, to then arrest fathers, to kill and shoot. They have a shoot to kill policy. And so the wider context just this year is that more than 115 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank, and also 65 in the latest bombardment campaign on Gaza. So, and that obviously with complete international impunity. So yeah, the Palestinians, a lot of the young people are fed up of having no political leadership that has no political project, no political confrontation with the regime of apartheid. And I think they want to take things in their own hands. And so, they are basically just themselves resisting constant military aggression and ghettoization.
Yeah, thanks for that. You mentioned in what you just said the settlements that surround Nablus, but also like all around the West Bank, including in Jerusalem. So one of the things that we've been seeing in the past few weeks is really distressing scenes of settler violence against Palestinians. So I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that. What have those attacks been like? What kinds of things? I'm thinking especially about what was happening in the town of Hawara, which is also close to Nablus, isn't it?
Yeah, so I would say the settler colonial regime and the apartheid system that Israel is running. You have the state apparatus, and then you have the incitement, so that citizens, basically also are just become thugs, and they are just settlers who believe that, who are completely dehumanizing Palestinians. And basically think that they're just masters in their own home, and they are complete thugs that are attacking Palestinians all the time. So this is happening across the West Bank, but also Jerusalem. You have to realize you have Israeli settlers who are protected and helped by soldiers. So you have the Israeli occupation forces who hand in hand either help or protect armed settlers, who obviously are encouraged by the political leadership, the Israeli political leadership, to carry weapons and carry attacks against Palestinians in complete impunity. And so we've seen that a lot happening, for example, in Masafariyata, the community, our friends who are, thousands of people are now threatened to be mass evicted, expulsed from their homes. They face daily attacks from settlers. And now this has intensified over the past few years. So not only in the past months, but in the past few years, there's been really daily monitoring of just settlers going down into villages and literally doing pogroms against Palestinians. And what the Israeli occupation forces do, the army is protecting them, is just looking, and basically Palestinians get beaten, houses get destroyed, cars get burned, and this of course has been incited by the Israeli political leadership that has more and more increased that racist discourse. So the context is increased dehumanization of Palestinians, and on the other hand, you have these politicians who are elected members of the Knesset, who are literally supporting that. I mean, we saw that in Sheikh Jarrah just a few weeks ago. Ben Gvir, just this one of the right-wing fascist Israeli politicians, said basically he had a gun in the middle of Sheikh Jarrah, and he said, if they throw stone at you, just shoot them. So that's is, I think, just mainstream now in the society, that Palestinians are not human, that deserve life. And I think the current month is because also we are in the olive harvest season. So every year, this is a peak, and settlers just wanting to further terrorize the Palestinians, because during let's say the months of October and November, Palestinians go in their lands, picking their olives and gathering around their trees, and a lot of these villages again are literally just surrounded by settlements. Some of them have lost their land, obviously. Some of them have been cut by the wall, and so those who go, it's they go with at risk. They go and with some level of fear, because when you just go in your land and you're surrounded by settlements, then settlers come and literally attack farmers and their volunteers. Obviously, there has been reports of burning trees as well, which means entire livelihoods for years for farmers. So I think the core of that is the total impunity, and the fact that eventually the Israeli political leadership is settlers themselves.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point for us to hear. I think especially in Britain, because our government here often will put out statements, let's say, condemning settlement expansion, or has a very kind of mild-mannered official position against settlements, but almost acts like that's detached from the Israeli state in a way. So I think it's really important what you've said. And of course, I mean, for us in our context here, in some cases, it's British companies that are also involved in this process. So one of the campaigns that we run is focused on the British bulldozer company JCB, which is used. The JCB bulldozers are used in house demolitions, in village demolitions, in Safariyata and other places. So it's really important for us here in Britain to have a say about how British companies are involved. And of course, the government here is approving millions of pounds worth of arms deals to the Israeli state every day. And those are the weapons that are coming from the UK and other places that are being used in these invasions of villages and cities. So I think there's an important lesson for us, I think, here in Britain to think about, and that's why we run campaigns like our Stop Arming Israel campaign. Look, one of the things that I wanted to talk about also, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, Inés, but you know, if Palestinians are sort of engaged in armed resistance, they're condemned. But also, if Palestinians are doing things like human rights work, so organizations that do things like monitor settler violence or call for nonviolent action, like BDS campaigns, they're also condemned and attacked, both by the Israeli government and its allies, but also here in the UK by our own government. Smearing and defaming them and trying to ban even that kind of, you know, human rights work. Can you say something a little bit about what those crackdowns on human rights work, on human rights defenders, Palestinian civil society have looked like?
Yeah, I think overall, you know, it's unfortunately an old trick in the book, and Israel has been using that for 75 years, right? Accusing Palestinians of being terrorists and them saying we're fighting terrorists. It's also an old trick in the book for any oppressed people who are fighting for their freedom and fighting for their liberation, that the oppressor is portraying you as, you know, either a terrorist or a thug and whatever. And unfortunately, you know, we're in that cycle where Israel is, you know, you have countries around the world who are further normalizing with Israel. You have countries around the world who are giving legitimacy to the regime that we're under. So the more things are actually worsening, the more Israel is receiving complete impunity internationally. So I think that's the important context, because this has been a very clear strategy. A PR strategy and a political strategy from the Israeli regime to either accuse anyone of being a terrorist or accuse anyone of being anti-Semitic. And so instrumentalizing, you know, and kind of changing the definition of anti-Semitism to include any criticism of Israel, or just labeling anyone a terrorist so that you don't receive international support or funding, and someone will start questioning your good faith or your again, your entire context. And so I think this is where we're at, right? Whether you are going to the UN, when we went to the UN, you know, this was deemed diplomatic terrorism. When we go and try with the ICC, you know, and have the International Criminal Court investigate, this is also anti-Semitic. When NGOs are doing their work, they, you know, become accused of being terrorists. And so I think what the Israelis realize is that, and that's, I think, is a sign that they're intimidated by, I think, young people on the ground who, you know, are actually not giving up on their freedom and dignity. And on the other hand, on the civil society and NGOs and organizations that are doing work to hold Israel accountable. And so this is a distraction tactic. This is very much to, you know, the smearing approach is very much of a distraction tactic, so that a lot of these organizations and a lot of these groups will go from an offense to a defense approach. And they use that against, whether it's the Lions Dens in Nablus or the NGOs, you know, the human rights groups. They literally, I think it's one of the Israeli politician, I can't remember if it's Benny Gantz or another one, who literally said, like, we need them to go from offensive to defensive. And that's what they've been using, and that's what you know, they're trying to demobilize us and to basically get us all to be on the defensive mode. so that we actually don't do the real work of confronting the occupation, of confronting the impunity front hand. And that's very exhausting, I think, for many of our friends, colleagues, because unfortunately, again, internationally, and I think the UK is also, the UK government is complicit, because they are giving always Israel the benefit of the doubt, despite their known misinformation campaigns, despite their bad faith, despite the entrenched, colonization, repression, and despite, again, whatever, even just what international law is saying. So in the past few days, like last week, 2 reports from UN experts just came out that repeat the exact same thing again and again. Israel has been violating international law for decades and in total impunity. They also say that the root causes is that Palestinians are preventing their right of self-determination, that the occupation has been an entrenched one, that is annexation, and that this is illegal, and that basically this is settler colonialism that needs to be disbanded. And so, the UN keeps continue to say that. They've been saying that for decades, and again, without any consequences, unfortunately. And I think Palestinians are just, we just want to take matters, in our own hand. And again, I think use whatever means that there are to confront that injustice.
Yeah, I think that's so significant for our work here. Also, it's really a call to us, and I think for us here in Britain, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement is a really important way for us to contribute to that struggle for justice, because it is about sort of interrupting that cycle of first of all of companies and the government just lending endless support to Israel while it continues this regime of apartheid and settler colonialism. So really important as we're watching things unfold in Palestine, and obviously our hearts are very much with the Palestinian people, both in historic Palestine, in the Palestinian homeland, but also the Palestinians who are living around the world and watching this from abroad. So important for us to be able to show our solidarity, but also to get down to the work, actually. And here, I think BDS work, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, is really important. Of course, we're fighting for our right to continue doing that work here in the UK, and for people that are ready to get involved. The PSC is running some campaigns, both to do the boycott, divestment, and sanctions work, not to always be on the defensive, but to be doing those campaigns, but also making sure that our repressive government here in this country doesn't succeed in banning us from doing it. So I wanted to thank you so much, Inés, for being here. It was really useful to hear all of these things. Of course, for people that are watching, I mean, Rabit by PIPD is such an invaluable resource, so please do follow on Instagram, on Twitter, where you can certainly see, I think you mentioned some maps that you've put on the Instagram there, Inés, and there's lots of resources all the time, not just when there's kind of a moment like this, that are so important for our work. And of course, folks can please follow the Palestine Solidarity Campaign here in the UK. And if you're in this country, please get in touch with us to get involved. I mean, there's so many campaigns that we need everybody to get stuck in on, and it's a really important thing for us to do, again, especially as, when Palestine's not in the headlines, or what's about Palestine in the headlines is only a half truth, if not complete disinformation. It's so important for us to be together as a movement. So thanks again, Inés, really appreciate it, and sending all of our love and solidarity over to you.
Thank you so much, Rivka. It was a pleasure, and let's continue to mobilize together to end
Absolutely.
complicity internationally, most importantly.
100%. Thanks, Inés.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody who was joining us tonight.